Hey all, Chris here, and welcome to this Q&A video. I do Q&As fairly regularly on my Instagram, every few months or so, I suppose. But this time around, I want to break out of the format a little bit and give some longer form answers. There is only so much information you can give to people in text that fits in a screen that big. So this is an attempt to do that. It is also an attempt to utilize my YouTube channel, which has been fairly dormant for the last forever, as you are painfully aware. Or maybe not painfully, but just aware. So without further ado, let's get into some questions and hopefully have some fun. Maybe. Let's find out. So my first question comes from t2.jpg, and he asks, are you proud of what you've achieved so far as a drummer? It's honestly not something I've given any real thought to, but put on the spot now, I guess there are times where I feel something that is a semblance of pride or proud. And it's mainly when I'm, reflecting on recent work that I've done, whether it be listening back to a recording that I've just finished, that I'm particularly happy with how it's turned out, or after a good tour. I definitely, not necessarily give myself a pat on the back, but I just like, all right, I did all right there. That's about as far as it goes. Pride is not necessarily a word that's in my vocabulary for the most part. So yeah, but at the same time, I am very grateful. I have a lot of gratitude to get to do what I get to do. I've seen a lot of parts of the world that I never, ever expected to see. So that's amazing and humbling in and of itself. So yeah, I guess if that counts as pride, then yes, but honestly, it's not something that I ever really think about. I just try and do good work and hope that the work, if I do good work, then I'll be happy, and that's kind of all I need. I don't need anything else outside of just knowing I did the best I could do. That's all the reward I need. Whether that's pride, being proud or not.
I guess, maybe. Anyway.
TomYork.88 asks, what's one piece of gear that has pushed you to try new things creatively? This is a great question, and I'd have to say none of it is drum related necessarily. The one piece of gear that has really pushed me over the last few years has been the ability to record myself. So just having an interface. It was something that I started really doing in earnest at the beginning of COVID. It's always something I'd wanted to do but never had the time or was just too lazy to do. All of a sudden COVID hits and I have nothing but time and no excuses. So I really started to dive into it. And the way that it's pushed my playing creatively is now I just think about stereo image a lot more. In the past, I might have just played stuff and not really thought about what crashes I'm hitting or what parts of the kit I am utilizing. But since I am listening to myself, in a recorded format in high fidelity, files now, I think about the stereo image a lot more. So I think about, okay, well, if I'm playing so much over here on the right-hand side of the kit, maybe I need to add something in the left-hand side of the kit just to give the listener some ear candy and just to add some excitement on both sides of the stereo image. So I'd really have to say that's got me thinking outside of the box a lot more and thinking a lot more deeply about the parts I come up with, I suppose. So without a doubt, I'd have to say having an interface and microphones. If that can be one piece of gear, then definitely that's my answer. But great question. All right, so the next question is from my friend Seems Music, and he asks, tips to work on syncopating left foot, please. Now, I'm assuming you're talking about pedal hats here. The tips I would have that if you've never done anything with your left foot before, I would just practice all the beats and fills that you do know with a quarter note in the left foot. So just playing a quarter note across everything that you know how to do. Once you can do that, I would then move to eighth notes. Once you're comfortable with all that, I would move to upbeat eighth notes, so playing on all the ends. And by the time you get through all of that, which is a lot, that's going to take a lot of time to get through in earnest, you'll have a degree of confidence and freedom in your left foot that wasn't previously there. You'll be able to turn that on and off at will, so you can move from eighth notes to quarter notes to upbeat eighth notes in the space of 2 bars, and it's not going to mess you up. So I'd recommend doing that. That will, oddly enough, having those kind of strict parameters will allow you to be a lot more creative further down the line. So yeah, I definitely recommend quarter notes, eighth notes, upbeat eighth notes. If the tempo is slow enough, do 16th notes too. Really give that left foot a workout. Jason Thomas asks, do you play the bluzda? Yes, probably a little bit too much. My next question comes from M. Palenko Drums. When learning songs by ear, what is the order in which you learn the different elements? My process is pretty similar all the time. I basically just listen to the kick and snare part to begin with and just try and get that down. That's always the skeleton of a drum part. So I get the skeleton down and make sure I'm hitting those correctly. And then I fill everything out. I'll add in ghost notes and obviously the cymbal pattern as well. And then start to add in little embellishments of my own when I'm comfortable with that. And things like fills, and of course. But that's generally the way I would do it. And if it's a particularly long phrase, like, if it's a 2-bar phrase, that's probably fine. But if it's maybe an 8-bar or a 16-bar phrase where there's a lot to remember, I might break it down into smaller chunks. So do maybe the first 2 bars or the first 4 bars, and then gradually piece it together until I have the whole thing comfortable. And memorized. So yeah, but I'm always going to start with the kick and snare pattern. That's generally the most important thing. Cymbal pattern on top of that, and then filling out anything with ghost notes and whatnot from there is pretty much the process I always use. Reverse Bjork asks, least/favorite part of touring as a drummer? Easily the hardest part about being away on tour is being away from my family at home. Not being able to help out and missing things at home is always really, really hard. There's nothing else to say about that. That is the hardest part. My favorite part about touring is getting to see the world, getting to go to places I never dreamed of going to, playing music that I really, really enjoy and passionate about with people who I really love and enjoy playing music with and enjoy hanging out with. That's a pretty great deal as far as I'm concerned. And, the other thing is in this music, I get to be me. So that's pretty great too. So yeah, it's a great deal, and it makes that sacrifice of being away from home a little bit easier. But with that being said, like I said, the hardest part is being away from home. That always sucks and will never get easy. But yeah, great question. So my next question is from T. Tyler M. Mickley, and he asks, what other instruments do you play? I don't play any other instruments. I'm a failed piano player, guitar player, bass player, and some would even argue failed drummer. But no, I wish I could play piano. I wish I could play bass really well. Guitar would be fine as well, but definitely bass as a drummer is an important relationship. So I've probably spent the most time trying to play bass. And then piano, I really wish I could play piano well. I did used to get lessons as a young kid, but that all quickly faded away once I started playing the drums and only cared about doing that. But yeah, I guess the only instruments I do play currently would be software instruments, and that doesn't really count because inserting Midi notes doesn't mean you can play it, right? So that's the closest thing I got. One day I will try and get good at keyboards, like piano again, and I should pick up the bass again. Maybe this will inspire me to do that. Thank you if it does. Lukey_Ale or AYL asks, is there an element of your playing that you've had to work on the most? Without a doubt, I'd have to say playing in time. I didn't start playing along to a metronome until maybe 4 or 5 years into my playing. Up until then, I was just playing along to records or just playing with other people or just playing by myself, trying to get better that way. But I never practiced to a metronome. So when I did start to do that, it was really, really difficult. So playing in time is definitely the hardest part. Back in the day, I'd start a song here and then do the full Stuart Copeland and it ended up there. But now, obviously that's not ideal in a professional situation, so I really had to work very, very hard on playing in time. And it's something that I still continue to work on to this day. You can always play things more in time, so I'm constantly trying to refine a lot of my vocabulary to make sure that it is in time as much as possible. So without a doubt, I'd say playing in time. Josh M. Roxas asks, how have you developed a more creative orchestration palette for soloing? I'm not sure if I would say I have that creative a palette for soloing, but the things that always work for me are just adding restrictions to my practice. So when I'm working on a new phrase, to begin with, I'll stick to very strict orchestration ideas. So maybe it's, the common kind of thing is to put your right hand on the floor tom and your left hand on the first rack tom. And just stick to that for a little while and just get the hands moving, and then slowly start to branch out from there once you're comfortable with that. So yeah, I think parameters always oddly help me to be more creative. So yeah, try some parameters on your playing, give yourself certain things that you can only hit at certain times, and it'll force you to come up with cool ideas or ideas that you might not have otherwise thought of if you didn't have those restrictions in place. So yeah, restrictions always help. Velasco _1_10 asks, what's the most important thing in the process of transcribing? I'm exploring lots of new language. Good for you. The most important thing in transcribing is listening. Listening carefully, listening to all the fine details of what's happening in the drum part, or whatever you're transcribing, whether it be drums or whatever other instrument, but listening really, really carefully. This also helps with playing in a playing situation, being able to hear outside of yourself. But yeah, listening is without a doubt the most important part about transcribing. If you can't tell what instrument is doing what, whether that's a floor tom or a kick drum, that's going to, impact how accurate your transcription is. So being able to discern the various elements of the drum kit is going to be imperative to having that accurate transcription. So listening, without a doubt. Huda Thunkit. Exercises to help me stay loose when playing, especially during faster fills where I tense up. This is a pretty common problem for a lot of people. But it's thankfully a relatively simple solution, and it's to focus on your breathing. And when you're tensing up, that's just a lack of oxygen going to that part of your body. So if your hands are tensing up during fast fills, it's because you're not breathing properly, and therefore lack of oxygen tenses up. Ways that you can practice this would be to just play simple things to begin with, so like a groove or something like that, and to practice breathing in time with what you're doing. So maybe you'll inhale on the downbeats and exhale on the offbeats, like the backbeats, excuse me. Or maybe inhale on 1, exhale on 3, that kind of vibe. And then you do that until that becomes really second nature. And then start to do that with fills too. And soon enough, you just will never have to think about your breathing again, and it'll just be second nature. It'll be automated. Breathing is already pretty automated, but it's not something because it is so automated, we don't really think about it all that often. And in situations like this, it is actually really, really important to practice breathing, as weird as that might sound. So doing things like that inevitably are going to help. It's something that I've worked a lot on myself over the years. The other thing that you could maybe think about is just some look at your grip. Maybe your grip you're too tight just generally. So maybe it's like making sure that there's movement, like room for movement for the stick to move in your hands, whilst you're playing. That would be another thing. If you do have questions about that, hit me up. We can always do a lesson about, technique and things like that. But I think the breathing will probably be the main cause of it. So definitely give that a go. Hopefully that helps you, man. And hopefully you'll be nice and loose during all those fast fills going forward. So my next question comes from Soy Santum. And he asks, how do you protect your equipment while traveling? I use mono cases. I've been using them now for a good couple of years. And I've never had an issue. So I use the cymbal bag, which you can see back there. It's a 24-inch cymbal bag. I throw that under the plane. I throw it in the back of trailers. I've never had any issues. It's tough as hell. It withstands having the crap kicked out of it, basically, and the cymbals are always fine. So I use the cymbal bag. I use their double pedal bag as well. I also use their stick bags and their snare bags and their backpacks too. So, mono cases are really, really amazing. They're really well built, really sturdy. They've got like a lifetime warranty on them too. They take some abuse and hold up each and every time. So that's all the breakable stuff I take on tour. The rest of the time when I'm touring, it's whatever the backline company puts the kits in. So it'll generally be hard cases for the drums and for the hardware as well. So, that's just kind of whatever I'm given. But for anything any breakables that I'm bringing, I exclusively use mono cases and recommend that you do too, because they are really, really great cases, like I said. So my next question is from Guitar Act 4. What are some important ideas for writing drum parts? Asking as a non-drummer. Listen carefully to your own music. So often I'm sent drum parts by any instrumentalist, whether it be guitarist or keyboardist or whatever, and the drum part is always just irrelevant to what's happening in the music. You're not listening to the intricacies of your own music and just pasting some drum beat that might sound cool by itself, but then just doesn't make sense in the rest of the context of the music. So listen to your own music. If the section is chill, write chill drum parts. We don't need big slam and rim shots and big ambient drums. Maybe you just need something tight and small and really chill. Listen to what the drummers that you admire, that you like, who write interesting parts. Listen to what they do in those types of sections, right? So listening is really, really one of the biggest things. From an actual programming point of view, what I find most guitar players also tend to do is program too much. They'll have a fill every 2 seconds and a bunch of cymbals happening that, again, add nothing but noise to the music. A crash cymbal is an impact cymbal, and if it's hitting every 2 seconds, it literally has no impact. So, if you can hold off hitting a crash cymbal for a while, when you do hit it, it actually has impact, which is its point, right? So less is more is definitely the adage I would take to writing drum parts. So listening and program less. Or you can also just hire me to do it, and I'll do it all for you. A Sprinkle of Jordan asks, thoughts on being in a Drumeo video? It was just cool. It's not something I ever really thought I'd ever get to do. I can kind of consider myself a small name drummer, I suppose, compared to a lot of the people that get on that channel. So I was, very humbled to be asked to do it, and also excited for the challenge of doing it. Being in front of a camera is not my default mode, I suppose. So putting myself in a very uncomfortable situation was definitely another reason to do it, to try something out of my comfort zone. But all in all, I'm really honored to be asked to do that. A lot of my favorite drummers have been on that channel, so to be in that, I guess on that roster, so to speak, was really cool. And everyone there at Drumeo, so Brandon, Aaron, everyone I dealt with on the back end, like Sarah and whatnot, were all unbelievably welcoming and unbelievably cool. It was a really, really great experience, like being there. It's a great facility. I was somehow very shocked at how big that facility actually is. There's a lot of people doing a lot of work there all the time. So it was really cool, kind of cool to see behind the scenes of it all. But all in all, I was, very honored and humbled to be a part of that. Being from Australia and going over to Canada to do that is kind of wild. So thank you to everyone at Drumeo for having me. I will watch that video myself one day, sometime soon. A Sprinkle of Jordan also asks, how have you found your way to your current drum setup, cymbals, etc.? If you're talking about the physical manifestation of my kit, I guess that's just an iterative process over the years. A lot of the way that I set up is to be as lazy as possible. So not, any extraneous reaching. I want to make sure that I can basically stay in this position here and reach everything that I need to. So from a physical standpoint, it's kind of about to be the most ergonomic setup that works for me. In terms of like the choices of drums and the drum sizes and cymbal choices, with cymbals, I prefer darker cymbals. So a lot of the Ks that I play, I pretty much only play Ks nowadays because they are just darker cymbals that can still cut, particularly, through guitars and whatnot in a mix. The ride cymbal I've been using forever is the 22-inch light ride, K light ride, and that thing just does everything that I need it to do. So it's super versatile for my type of playing. So most of the things I tend to use all the time. So most of those cymbals will just be the go-to cymbals I'm playing, regardless of what music I'm playing. They are really versatile. In terms of the drums, I've been using Sonar SQ1s for 6 or so years now, and again, I just find they work really, really well for most situations. So I'm looking for versatile instruments, and these always give it to me as far as I'm concerned. In terms of choices of the drums themselves and cymbals, versatility and just everyday usage, I guess, is what I'm after. And all of these, the Zildjian Ks and the Sonar SQ1s, do that for me in spades. Charlene Lamar asks, what Pliny song do you find the most challenging to play live and why? I'd have to say generally the hardest songs that we play are new ones that we add to the set list, whether they be new songs or previous songs previously that I've not played before. Most recently songs like Still Life and The Red Fox have been added to the set, and they both provide their own challenges, and it's mainly just about getting really comfortable with them. Some of the older songs, like even songs off Impulse Voices, we've played them so many times now that they just feel comfortable already, whereas as a unit that is, whereas like when we're adding new songs, it sometimes does take a while for them to gel. Like Still Life took a fair while to get comfortable live. Just anything new is always going to be a challenge, just to make everything sit right. And to feel natural and good, basically. So I would say Still Life and Red Fox have been the most challenging more recently. I'd say songs that always kind of got me not necessarily nervous, but I always had to work on a lot was Away. Away was is a strangely challenging song, just again to make everything sit right. The parts themselves don't look all that crazy by themselves, but to make that feel good is actually pretty challenging, at least to me. So a song like Away is a good example of an older song that I've always found a little bit challenging, again, mainly just to make sit right. But good question. Pray.rock asks, what are some things you find guitar players can do better while programming drums? Kind of answered this before, but I'll reiterate again. Do less. Less cymbals, less fills. Give the music space. T. Shan Kwan asks, any advice or progression to get into odd timing? I am stuck in 4/4 and I can't count 3/4 to save my life. The thing that I did to get comfortable with just being able to hear an odd time signature, which is generally the problem, is being able to hear them. The thing that I did to overcome that was to find songs that were in an odd meter and just count to them, relentlessly count over the top of it. So find a song that stays in a consistent time signature, so a song like 5/4, for example, or 7/4, and just count along to it until you can hear where the resolution point is, where it starts over again. And then start to look at music that starts to use some mixed meters. So for me, the band that always comes to mind is that helped me with this was Dream Theater, listening to songs from Scenes from Memory and whatnot were really important to help me understand mixed meters, because there's a whole bunch of mixed meters going on all the time. So I would just used to sit there and count along to it until I knew exactly what was happening in every measure. Counting along to music, particularly music that you're familiar with, is going to be the best piece of advice I can give you for that. And it will really, really help. Like, it did wonders for me, so I'm sure it can do wonders for you too. Good luck. Giacomo.panetta asks, what approach do you take to writing, composing drum parts? My approach is to basically listen to what's happening and then jam along to it. So I'll just sit back here and jam along to it until I come up with something that I think, that kind of excites me, I suppose, or maybe surprises me in some way as well. And then I'll record it and then keep going and see what else I can come up with. And then generally what I'll do is send through all those different options to whatever artist, whomever the artist is that I'm working for, and let them choose what their favorite one is. I never try to go into a writing session, which is generally just me just sitting back there by myself. But I try never to go into those situations with a preconceived idea. I always want the music that I'm listening to and playing to inspire my drum part. So, for example, none of the parts I've played with Plenty have been from a preconceived idea of like me practicing in here and then coming up with something cool and going, oh, I'm going to jam that in a Plenty tune or something like that. All the parts on those tunes are born out of being inspired by jamming along to them. So, so that's generally how I write for pretty much every artist. Occasionally, there will be times where I don't want to sit down and like learn a whole bunch of difficult music, so I'll program ideas out. Like the second half of the Glass Bead game, I kind of built a skeleton drum part in using GGD, and then because I just didn't want to learn it all, and then Plenty turn around and say, no, I hate that. And so I just wasted a bunch of time. So as a time-saving mechanism, occasionally I'll program parts, and then if that gets approved, then I'll learn it. But that's generally the process for me. Till.b_ asks, what is your favorite rudiment? The double stroke roll, without a doubt. Justin M. Sheets, would you rather brush Plenty's hair or Jakey's beard? As an individual that already has a beard but no hair, I'd have to go with brushing Plenty's hair. And that would be the only reason, because I already have a beard to brush. So I don't want to touch Jake's beard ever. I don't really want to touch Plenty's hair either. I guess if I had to answer that question, Plenty's hair. John XYU, woo. Can you do the Red Fox playthrough? Maybe I'll try and grab some footage of it at some point on tour over the next couple of months. That'd probably be easier than doing a playthrough. Playthroughs are great, and I like that they're out there, but for me, it's always more work than it's kind of worth to some degree. So I have a love-hate relationship with playthroughs for myself. I love watching other people doing them, but doing them myself, I definitely have a love-hate relationship. But maybe a live playthrough or just a live performance of the song will be the way to go. So fingers crossed. Chris.mac5 asks, playing every night on tour can be very demanding. How do you stay inspired? I would have to say that the audience keeps me inspired. So playing in a different town every night to a different crowd, obviously, keeps that inspiring. So making sure that I'm giving them the same that I gave the night before and the night before that and whatnot, that is inspiring enough because it's, as I keep kind of saying here, getting to travel to any place that isn't where I live to play these songs to a fresh audience is always amazing. So I want to make sure that I'm giving the best that I can whilst I'm out there. So that is what keeps me inspired on tour. And thankfully, whilst we do tend to play a lot of the same songs, there's certain songs that we're always going to play, like Electric Sunrise is always going to be in the set list. There is still enough room for movement in those songs, and I'm allowed a little bit of freedom to try things out that are a little bit different night to night, so that keeps those songs fresh as well. So even though I've played Electric Sunrise however many 100 times now, I still, regardless of whether there's a extended jam in the middle of it or not, there's still ways to keep that fresh and exciting and not just going through the motions, so to speak. So yeah, but good question. Maddie H. James asks, when did you start drumming and were you always good at rhythm? I started playing drums when I was about 12 years old, maybe 13, which is probably, it's realistically a bit of a late starter. But I started because of a school project where we had to play along to a song, so just play a simple beat to a song of our choosing. And it seemed to come somewhat naturally to me, or at least it made sense. So, where you hit the hi-hat and where the kick and snare landed with, within that framework immediately kind of made sense. And I could also discern which instrument was doing what quite easily by listening to the music. So I could hear when the kick drum was playing. So that was kind of what lit the fire. So I don't know if it was necessarily good, but I had it did come quite comfortably. But yeah, if you were to listen to that performance, I'm sure it was terrible. But at the same time, it did make sense. And that was kind of what lit the fire. And, I'm still going however many years later now, 600 years later that I've been playing. But that was what lit it. It was actually a school thing. It was about the only good thing about that I learned in high school, I think. Oh, that's sad. Matt Terra Guitar asks, will you release any more MIDI groove packs via GGD or independently? I'd definitely be interested in doing something like that in the future. It was a great creative challenge, particularly with the way that the GGD frames their groove packs and the way that Matt was explaining it to me. That, you basically do 15 different songs and then you do different sections of each songs. I kind of just took it as like 15 different themes and worked around those. So that was a really great creative challenge and similar to what I was saying about writing drum parts, I didn't go in with any preconceived idea. I just found a time signature or a theme that I really liked and then just built everything off of that. So it was a really fun creative challenge and, it also happened to coincide with the very beginning of COVID. So it gave me something to be preoccupied by when there was really not anything to do or any hope of things to do, I suppose. So it was a great experience and working with the whole GGG team, with Des and Matt in particular. Was super easy and they were great. So I'd definitely do something with them again. Would I do it independently? Probably not, mainly because I'm just lazy in that kind of sense. Working with another group of individuals or a team like GGD kind of gives me a kick up the pants to do it. So, I'd definitely be interested in doing something like that in the future. Who knows? Maybe it'll happen. Don't know. But thank you for checking it out as well. It's been really amazing to see people's response to that and people getting things out of that groove pack that I did do with them. So if you do want to check it out for yourself, the link is again here or here. Again, not good at YouTube, sorry. But thank you for checking that out and continuing to check it out. It's really, again, humbling to see you guys getting something out of that. And I'm glad it's been able to inspire you to create music of your own. So yeah, thank you again. J.E. Bosicot, apologies either way, asks, what is your practice routine? My practice routine nowadays is very much dependent on what I have going on in my career at the time. So if I have a tour or recording session coming up, I'll just be drilling the material that I need to know for either of those situations. If I do have time to do kind of independent practice and practice things that I really want, there's two ways I kind of go about doing that. I would generally do some pad work. If I'm doing pad work, for instance, I try and do that away from the drum kit to keep my time at the drum kit fun. So I'll just do really boring kind of mechanical exercises on the pad and with a kick pad at home as well. So just kind of go through the motions and kind of just get into a meditative state with some of these things that I might practice. So maybe it's just like a hand and foot combination thing that I'm doing, or just hand drills themselves. And then when I get to the kit, I'll try and allow myself to be a bit more creative and have a bit more fun. So I'll play along to music or just play along to a click track and try and incorporate some of the ideas that I was practicing in that kind of dry state, I suppose. and put that into some context behind the kit, which just means, it's a lot more inspiring when I'm behind the kit. I also recommend that you do differentiate between practice and playing, and do both where you can. This is something Benny Greb talks about a lot, and I really think it makes a lot of sense. So when you're in your practicing mindset, just practice. And when you're playing and playing along to music, you don't really think about the technical side and you just enjoy playing because, that's what we want to be doing when we're playing music. We just want to be playing music and not thinking about what we're doing. So, I definitely recommend you do that yourself. D-Dub asks, what are your top 3 albums you wish you could have played on in an alternate universe? There's no way I'm going to be able to keep this to 3. But some albums that immediately come to mind would be albums like And Justice for All by Metallica, Nothing by Meshuggah, Delau's in the Crematorium by Mars Volta, Voodoo by D'Angelo, Calculating Infinity by Dillinger Escape Plan, any John Mayer record. Just off the top of my head, those are albums that I always have loved the drumming on and always loved the music of, and would be rad to be a part of. But at the same time, if I played on those records, none of them would be as good as what they are. But that's a tough question. But I know it's not 3, but this is my video. I can do whatever I want. Zen_drums asks, Tool Band, I am sure you must have given a thought of doing drum covers for one of their banger songs. Why not, if not? I can honestly say I've never thought about doing a cover of a Tool song or any song for that matter. Why not? That would just be because I don't feel like I have anything to add to that space. There are already a number of amazing drummers who are doing great covers on YouTube and online elsewhere as well. I don't feel I have anything to add into that space. And I also just prefer to, if I'm putting out a video, I want it to be something that I'm somewhat creatively involved in. For mine, it just doesn't align with my kind of goals and ethos, I suppose. And that's not a slight on any drummers that are doing that because, like I said, there are a lot of amazing drummers that do great covers online all the time. And I love to watch them just as much as the next person. And as much as I love Tool, I just have no interest in really doing that now in the future. I guess the closest thing you would have to ever seeing me do a drum cover online would be the video that I did with Drumeo, learning the summoning, or attempting to learn the summoning and attempting to play that song by Sleep Token that I did with Drumeo at the end of last year. So that's probably as close as you're ever going to get to me doing a drum cover online. If you haven't checked that out and you want to, there's a link here or here. Check it out if you want. It was a fun video to do. A challenge, a very big challenge to learn that within 50 minutes or whatever it was that I had to learn it. So, it was a fun video to do, to check it out. But other than that, you're not going to see me doing drum covers anytime soon. Or ever. Bryce O'Connor 3927 asks, I really want to know about the low-tuned offset snare you use and how you get a sound like that. Some simple things to do. Crank the bottom head, make the snare wires pretty tight, and then just loosen the batter head till it's pretty much loose. And definitely, something I've been doing more recently is getting the 2 or 3 lugs that are closest to me, like where I'm going to be hitting, and I loosen those completely. And then just dampen it to taste. So I'll either use a big fat snare drum product or tape or whatever I have lying around. And that's basically it. Thankfully, also, live, Ronnie Young, our front of house engineer with Pliny, knows exactly how to treat that to make that sound nice and fat out front too. So that definitely helps. But in terms of practical things that you can do just to the drum itself, those are some little things that I generally tend to do to get that sound nice and quick. Good luck. Behind the Kit Official asks, now that you've been playing with Pliny for a long time, what is your favorite song to play that you didn't write the original drum track to? I definitely have to say Paper Moon. It's the first song I ever heard with Pliny, so I guess that plays into it in some way, but it's just a really fun song to play. There's obviously a lot of odd meter changes and whatnot, which is fun to mess around with. But there's also a lot of room to improvise, particularly in some like the middle kind of like little solo-y parts that come up. So that's always the song that I look forward to playing live. KSHITIJK14 asks, as a guitarist, how can I work on limb independence and some chops to start with? Just try and add your left foot to grooves that you can already play, if you can play grooves. That is all the limb independence you'll need to begin with, and that is a lot of work. So again, like I kind of mentioned earlier, just play quarter notes along, or quarter notes or eighth notes along to the beats and fills that you already do know, and that will take you in a long way to getting some pretty strong limb independence together. Good luck with that. Elutherarch asks, what have you found to be the most important concept when it comes to your own playing? Secondly, how have you approached practicing displacement? To answer the second question, I used books like Future Sounds by David Garibaldi and Rhythmic Illusions by Gavin Harrison. If you haven't checked those books out, I really recommend them. They're great resources and still books I return to now for some inspiration every now and then, so definitely check those books out. The most important concept of my own playing would have to be listening. I feel like I can be a lot more creative and a lot more inside the music when I focus on everything but me, essentially. So listening to the other musicians I'm playing with or just recording to is definitely the best, the strongest concept that I use all the time and is the most helpful to me. So I can't overstate enough how important listening is, so just listen. The Iron Rhino 110 asks, how does a freelance drummer like yourself secure high-end gigs with artists and celebs such as Tony Hawk? Some stories about being on tour with him would also be cool. Social media harassment goes a long way. So I play in a cover band called Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of a Tony Hawk Pro Skater cover band, and we play the music of the first 4 Tony Hawk video games. And basically, a few years ago, we were doing a few gigs around Sydney, and every time we would do a gig, we'd tag Tony Hawk on social media with videos and all that type of stuff. And he eventually caught wind of that and saw some of the video and enjoyed it enough that he kind of befriended us in some sort of way, and invited us to play a charity concert that he was putting on for the 20th anniversary of the game being released. So he flew us out to San Diego to take part in that. We just kind of, it's a weird thing to have someone of that kind of stature know anything about you in any kind of way. Not that he knows anything about me personally, but I think you know what I mean. To be aware of that at all is kind of wild. And, Tony is a incredibly humble guy. Like, he definitely knows he's a big deal in a certain sense, but it's definitely not gone to his head. Like, he's very, very generous with his time, the times that we have spent with him, like we went out when we were in San Diego, we went out to his headquarters and he showed us around that and put on like a mini skate demo for us, which was amazing. And, at one point he just goes, "Hey, do you want me to jump over you guys on the vert ramp?" And yeah, of course, when Tony Hawk asks if you want him to jump over you, you say yes. So that was just a crazy weekend that was. And, then earlier this year he did a speaking tour in Australia, and we opened up those shows and got to play some music with him as well, which was really, really cool. But yeah, Tony Hawk is literally everything you want him to be. He's a really lovely guy. And like I said, really generous with his time. And is still just so passionate about skateboarding. It's really, really great to see. And it's inspiring to see, someone that's in their early kind of 50s is still so passionate about something that they've been passionate about their whole life. So, that's inspiring to me. Hopefully I can be as passionate about drumming and music as he is about skateboarding at that age. So, yeah, man, it was very, very cool to spend some time with him. And still a weird thing that he knows anything about me. Or not necessarily about me, but about the band and what we do with that. Very, very weird, but very, very cool all the same. All right, that about wraps it up. Thanks, everyone, for the questions. Hopefully you found this somewhat insightful and informative, and maybe even entertaining. I'll look to do this in the future if you guys enjoyed this video at all. Also, let me know if there is anything you would like to see on this channel in the future, whether it be lessons about general drumming concepts or about things in Pliny's music. Feel free to let me know in the comments below. But until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you later. Peace.